What's up everybody, Viktor here, and it's time for another nation guide. This one is for Georgia, so let's go ahead and get started. And of course, what we're turning to first is the estates and privileges. This is a standard start. Go ahead and grant whatever you feel like granting. There's nothing that's absolutely required. For the most part, none of this is really going to decide whether or not you succeed or not. That being said, I still recommend granting the monarch point generators because your starting rulers are really bad. And I do recommend granting the religious diplomats. This can help you get Muscovy on your side, which can help prevent the Ottomans from attacking you. Other than that, go ahead and grant what you want. I do recommend, though, you grant all of your privileges first and then seize land, because then you'll end up with 5% crown land. If you seize first and then grant privileges, you'll end up with 4.999. So just be sure you go down and you assign the privileges first and then seize, otherwise you'll have problems. But with that, you're done with the estates and privileges. Setting up your military at the start of the game is pretty quick and easy. You're simply going to hire the free company in one of your provinces, and then you're going to make both your ruler and your heir into generals, hoping for either high shock pips or high siege pips. Fire pips are okay, but not really that great. The reason why is because you need to expand and take out Imereti and Samtskhe as soon as possible, and well, both of them have forts on mountains, meaning it's going to take a long time, and fighting their armies is really going to suck. So being able to win that fight handily through a lot of shock pips or fire, or at least being able to siege out their capitals a lot easier with those siege pips will definitely help. If you have a choice between the two of them, like I do here, where there's not really a difference, go with the heir, because if the king dies while he's sieging a fort, you lose 2 stability. If the heir dies doing it, no one cares. And plus, while both of them are bad, the heir is significantly worse. You're going to be ending up clicking this button as soon as you possibly can, but you're going to be using him to take out these two. But with that, your military is now set up, and we can move on. Your starting rivals are also pretty quick to set up, so you already know you're going after Imereti and Samtskhe, so you're going to rival those two, and then I choose to rival Servan because Karakiunlu tends to take them out pretty quickly, allowing you to get some extra power projection because they're no longer strong enough to be your rival. Now, I will point out one very big problem. Imereti here, they share your dynasty, and the guy's 64 years old. Usually when this guy dies, what will end up happening is he'll fall under a personal union with you, which you obviously do not want. While it's great to not have to siege down his capital mountain fort, it's still a big problem because, well, that's 50 years you really can't annex him. Now, there is a way around this, and I'll get around to that, seeing if it happens in this game, but if it does happen, it's not the end of the world. You do not have to restart. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to talk about diplomacy. Unfortunately, no one is going to ally you. No one is going to help you. While I am able to get a royal marriage with Circassia, I do not want it because I need to take their land too. So instead, what you need to do is you need to improve relations with Poland, and then you need to improve relations with Muscovy. These two are going to be the ones that are most likely to help protect you against the Ottomans. So the sooner you get them on your side, the better off and really the safer you will be. However, until that happens, Karakiunlu, the Ottomans, Akkayunlu, all can easily attack you and generally wipe you out, because even Akkayunlu tends to ally the Ottomans. And if they attack you, you're pretty much in restart territory. So I'm going to go ahead and unpause the game, because at this point I simply need to wait for these guys to be spit out and then be able to actually attack Samtskhe. You are attacking Samtskhe first for one very particular reason. The moment you attack anybody, Karakiunlu is going to warn you, meaning you can't attack Servan. And if you attack Imereti, that means you also cannot attack Samtskhe. So instead of attacking Imereti first, you're going to attack Samtskhe, because then you can attack Imereti afterwards, warning or not. So I'm going to go ahead and declare this. I will pause the recording and see you guys in a little bit, but just by unpausing it, he should back up, allowing me to walk and just siege down the fort without a fight, and then I'll take Tau later on with a fight. At least that way, I'm able to control when it happens. But I'll see you guys in a little bit. And welcome back, everybody. So now that I'm done integrating both Imereti and Samtskhe back into the fold, let's talk about your next expansion into Circassia. You see, Circassia will usually be a tributary under the Great Horde. They are not in this game, but usually they are. which means in order for you to attack them, you'll also be calling in the Great Horde to defend them. So how do you go ahead and attack them, since they're really your next expansion path? Simply put, Circassia also has a habit, though they did not in this game, of allying either Theodoro, which is only Crimea, which is a lot easier to handle than the Great Horde, or they will ally Trebizond, which, again, much easier to deal with than the Great Horde, or they'll ally Moldavia if they are still around. In this instance, none of that is true, so I can just take out Circassia. But I wanted to talk about a couple of other things, specifically Theodoro and Trebizond. Do not take either province. While it would be nice to have the grasslands to dev push an institution in Theodoro, at the end of the day, to do so you'd be making Poland and the Ottomans very mad. And while you don't really care if the Ottomans are mad, they will likely attack you over Theodoro. The exact same true is with Trebizond. While I do have the Muscovites over here to help protect me against the Ottoman aggression, if I have Trebizond, they're going to attack me anyway. And while we might win, me and Muscovy, I'm not strong enough to even really start swinging that balance in my favor, and while this is a nice choke point, they also tend to ally with Akyunlu, meaning they can just walk around that mountain fort to begin with, and while there is another one they'll walk into, this one doesn't help me. I already have a mountain fort to have them bleed on, so there's no need to have Trebizond. So in this instance, I'm going to go ahead and attack Circassia here and full annex them. So I will see you guys in just a little bit. And welcome back, everybody. Now that Circassia has been brought into the fold, let's talk about your next expansion options. While Gazimuk looks like it would be a good option to go after, they're usually not, because they're about 80% of the time allied to the Ottomans. So you're likely not going to be able to go after them because, well, you can't fight the Ottomans yet. Crimea is a good option because usually you're able to take them on unless they have a lot of strong allies, including the potential Ottomans. The problem is that if you do so, Poland and Lithuania will eventually decide they want this land. Lithuania now, if they're independent, Poland will once they form the Commonwealth. Once they form it, suddenly they'll decide all of Crimea's land they really want. And they will break their alliance and attack you to get it. So if you're relying on Poland to either fight the Ottomans or at least stop them from attacking you like I am, taking Crimea is not a great option. Lastly, there's the Great Horde. The Great Horde has Astrakhan as a vassal, which you can get out of them, and you can ally Nogai, usually, to have them come in and help you. To help with that, if they are rival to the Great Horde, which they usually are, set yourself to be threatened by them, and usually, though not always, Nogai will get some extra reasons to ally you, and it'll be a pretty easy alliance pickup. Muscovy can also come in because they will usually want some Great Horde land. The problem is twofold. One, you don't necessarily want Muscovy having this land because you want it just as much as they do. But more importantly is two, there is a chance, because this did happen in one of my games as a test run. I did 60 test runs of this and it happened one time. Because they were rival to both Nogai and Kazan, who both wanted to take on the Great Horde, which usually is what happens, they guaranteed the Great Horde. Meaning I couldn't attack them for about 20 years. If that happens, you're pretty much stuck. Because the only other real expansion opportunity you have, because Akyunlu allies the Ottomans every single time it seems, is to go after Karakyunlu, who is still a bit stronger than you. Now, if they are having massive rebel problems, you can go in on them. And if you can get the vision on Ajam, either because they expanded into territory you can see, or you can get somebody to sell you maps, such as Nogai, while you're attacking the Great Horde, or finally, if you're able to steal the maps once you have enough tech levels to actually see them, fantastic. Ally them because they will always be a rival of Karakyunlu, as you can see here, meaning they'll be willing to come in and they'll have about another 10,000 troops to distract Karakyunlu because they will entirely focus on knocking Ajam out of the war, allowing you, as long as you're not on a mountain fort, though you will always be on a mountain fort, to be relatively ignored and allow you to carpet siege them. So at this point, I'm going to focus on the Great Horde because I have Muscovy, I should be able to get Nogai relatively quickly and move on from there. So I will see you guys in just a few minutes. Hey guys, Victor from the future here. I got all the way through the guide before I realized there were some things I forgot to talk about. So let's go ahead and briefly discuss these because they're pretty important to understand how to play this game out and how to actually succeed at this. First things first, how do you deal with the Great Horde or Crimea when you're trying to get Circassia? You see, Circassia, as I said before, is usually a tributary of the Great Horde, so if you attack them directly, they're coming in. However, if you attack Theodora because they're allied to Circassia, they tend to be a tributary of Crimea, so they come in. And usually the Great Horde has about 20,000 troops, and Crimea has about 10 to 12,000. And they can also ally Trebizond, which makes it a lot easier because Trebizond is only allied to them, and then the tributary status doesn't matter. So, how do you end up doing this without having to restart until they just ally Trebizond? It's actually fairly easy. You see, both Crimea and the Great Horde, which are actually the threats that you're going to have, are both nomadic. The reason why this matters is because while their cavalry are excellent in terms of pips, they also get a bonus or debuff depending on terrain type. They get a 25% increase in shock damage if the terrain is flat, and they get a 25% debuff if it is not. Now, everything in Circassia and above, that's all going to be flatland. You're going to be fighting in flatland for a very long time. However, everything in your home terrain here, none of it is flat. Which means all you need to do is fall back, split your army in half, scorch the earth, and try and bait them to attack you on hills. Not only will this reduce their damage by 25%, because just by looking at this army, half of it is cavalry. So as long as you can punch through their infantry, which are going to be the real damage dealers at this point, you're going to be fine. And their infantry largely suck. So you'll be able to end up reinforcing it, pushing them off the hills, because on top of that, they're going to be losing dice rolls, and hopefully by doing so, cause enough casualties for them to peace out, or for them to be attacked by other people. If they get attacked by others, then they start getting sieged out, and they really want to peace out quick because they have other things to go deal with. After that, Circassia only has 4,000 troops, and they're usually terrified of you. So use mercenaries, use proper reinforcement, and just beat them down using the terrain to your advantage. Now, if you're fighting Trebizond, generally they're going to try and siege out this mountain fort, so you might have to fall back and then help defend that fort, or use mercenaries, but with any luck, they won't be an ally. If they are, they can walk through to get you on Trebizond. So be very careful about that. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about is fort placement. Right here, this fort will protect you generally from people walking to the north. But, as I said before, if they control Trebizond, nothing will stop them from walking here. So if you can, build a fort either here on the marshland, because this is a -1 dice roll, or move it over 1 to here so you have it on a mountain area. Now, this is something that you do later on because you're going to need a lot more money, and as I explained later on, your economy really sucks. So I'm going to go ahead and get you guys back to the normal guide, but thank you all for watching. Have fun with the rest of the guide. And welcome back, everybody. As you can see, I now have an Ostrakhan vassal, which means I am able to reconquer a lot of land out of the Great Horde for Ostrakhan's sake. Now, I'm not actually going to be playing this game any further because it's about 15 to 20 years after the start of the game, which means, just by simple variance, it's not going to be overly useful for me to explain to you how I'm going to continue expanding, because your game might be different. So instead, I'm going to tell you the overall strategy, or where you're going, and why you're wanting to go there, so you can plan around that, around what your current game is, to try and accomplish that. Simple enough. Once you've taken over Ostrakhan's land, you'll either then be able to fabricate your own claim once you've integrated them, or set this as vital interest land and have them fabricate it for you. But if you notice, no guy has lost land in that last war. Now, while currently they are too large for me to force vassalize, another couple of wars where they lose land means I'll be able to get a claim over the Caspian Sea right here, come over here and force vassalize them, and then reconquer all of their land too, making them really happy, and then integrate them. This will allow me to then push further into Uzbek, because right here is where Kazakh is, and as you can see, they are a very large area. To the north, the rest of Uzbek's land is Siberia, which means I'll be able to get somebody about roughly that size worth of land without a whole lot of conflict, because Uzbek tends not to have strong allies, and they tend not to be very strong themselves because they constantly have rebel problems. So do all their allies. So your expansion path to the north is pretty simple. Use Nogai and Muscovy to attack the Great Horde until you're done with Ostrakhan. Let Nogai fall to their own fate, especially if they're getting pincered by Great Horde and Uzbek. Muscovy will generally just sit on forts and siege them down, leaving Nogai to be completely annihilated and lose a bunch of land, and that's what you want, until eventually you come back through, get it all back, and then push further into Uzbek, and then keep pushing, and then keep pushing, until eventually you could be bordering Ming for all you care, as long as you have more land, and the Ottomans still don't attack you. As far as moving to the south, that's pretty simple. Your target is Karakoyunlu. Now in this game, they did something that's relatively rare, and they allied the Timurids, which is why you see me improving my relations with Transoxiana, because for whatever reason in the current patch, even though they have nothing but disloyal vassals, they won't actually fire. Even though they're all allied together, which means they should absolutely win this, they won't do anything. Not unless you support their independence, and they think you are strong enough to fight the Timurids on your own. I know, it's annoying, but it is what it is. So I need to improve relations with Transoxiana, and hopefully they will fire the Independence War, but we shall absolutely see about that. But what you're trying to do here is find a couple of vassals that you will want to release. Now there are a couple that you don't want to be doing. For instance, Armenia. While there are 4 provinces in Karakoyunlu that you can release, there are 2 that were part of Samtskhe that you can get them as well. And while it might be worth it to release these 2 that's 16 development to allow you to reconquer, sometimes it's not here. You don't want to have to repay to get your cores back. It's not worth it. If you had conquered this originally, you didn't have a core on it, I'd say at that point, go ahead, release Armenia. But you already have a core, and these are not high dev provinces. Meaning, you can just conquer them yourself, core them up yourself, and you'll be fine. Now over here there is Bitlis, which is a vassal under Karakoyunlu that is at the start of the game. It's only 3 provinces, but if you want to release them while you're moving to the 2 actual vassals you want, you can. The 2 ones you really want are Saran, which is a Kurdish country, so you have to release it in Mosul, but that'll be 5 cores for you. And then in Sinjar, that are Mashriqi, that is Iraq, which will give you a lot more. And then once you're done with them, you have Basra far down here, which is about another 5 provinces, meaning once you're done, and you've actually taken all this on, what's going to be left is about this. This is all that's going to be left of Karakoyunlu. Very small, very easy to wipe out. Nobody's really going to target them but Ajam. And after that's done, Ajam's probably going to flip on you and become a rival, and then you push through them, and keep pushing through Persia till you hit India, and then you can keep going. So what you're doing is you're denying not only all of Central Asia to the Russians, but you're denying Persia to not only the Persians, but also the Ottomans. And you're going to use the power of both to focus down the Ottomans, or the Russians if they decide to become a problem. Now, you are going to be in a religious problem if you don't take religious ideas, so I'd really recommend you take religious ideas, if for no other reason than to save you from, well, not converting all of this. The last thing I want to talk about is you do get a new estate once you've taken out Circassia. As you can see, I now have the Cossacks. It's because you're an Eastern Tech Group country, meaning once you have steppe provinces, which you do in Circassia, you're able to get this estate down. The reason why this is so important is because you don't have any good land to develop. Mountains are garbage for developing. Marshes and hills, also garbage for developing. Steppe provinces are plus 20. However, once you have the Cossacks, this estate privilege reduces that by 15. So it doesn't eliminate the problem, but it makes it substantially easier for you to deal with. It does take 5 crown land, though. So don't grant this until you're prepared for it. That being said, you want to take this because there's no other place you can really dev push an institution. Because if you look, there's no one really around that isn't going to make the Ottomans or somebody else important attack you. So steppe it is. Now there are a couple of other privileges you should be aware of. Gives you Cossack units, though 6.3%. When I have a force limit of 12 is about one guy, so it's not worth the 5 crown land yet. The recruit Cossack leaders is amazing. 10 influence for better generals and morale in your army. Yeah, I'll go with that. But do not grant the prime herding rights. Your economy is garbage. I mean it. It is absolute garbage. First off, if you actually look at the development map mode, you will notice that, yeah, you don't have a whole lot of development for anything. But more importantly, if you look at your trade nodes, at the start here, you don't have good trade power, you don't have good trade nodes, you don't have a lot of goods produced. On top of that, you don't have any good trade goods. They're just not there. You're not even going to be expanding into anywhere with good trade goods for a very long time, meaning you can't rely on trade. You have to rely on tax. And what that privilege does is it reduces your tax income in steppe provinces by 50%, but you get 25% more manpower. The problem is that, as I said before, you're dev pushing in these steppe provinces. And while it is a percentage, you don't necessarily want to be dev pushing with military power in order to get the more manpower there instead of taking military tech. Because if you don't take military tech and you're instead focusing on the institutions with military power, you're going to fall behind and the Ottomans are going to attack you. So instead you have to use Diplo and admin power. The thing is that if you're using admin power to drastically boost up that tax income, to then cut it in half, means you're not really getting any economic benefit, which is what's going to keep you from bankruptcy here. So don't grant that privilege. It's not worth it. Every time I've granted that privilege in the test runs, I end up struggling with debt spirals. Every time I don't grant it, I'm perfectly fine. So don't grant the privilege. Save yourself a whole lot of frustration. Now that all of that has been said, you guys should be more than good to go. Just keep in mind, push north, go through the Great Horde, jump to Nogai, especially if Muscovy ended up pushing down this far, and use the Caspian Sea to connect yourself to further expansion paths into Central Asia. Even if you can't take Siberia, it's still absolutely worth it to go through Uzbek and towards Oirats. And then as well, if you can, push south and go through Persia and try to get towards India, if not into India, because by the time you have that much land, by the time you're Georgia this size, the Ottomans should be no problem at all. Because not only will they be so focused on trying to siege down your mountain forts, you should outnumber them by that point. With all of that being said, if you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I will absolutely be making more guides, and you'll be seeing a new one coming out really, really soon. Now, if you want me to cover a specific country or a specific game mechanic, let me know in a comment below. The nations currently on my lists are Navarra, Serbia, Trebizond, the Cherokee, and an Australian tribe for the Australia-Hungary achievement, some of which I might be doing more as a playthrough as opposed to a guide, because things like the Australia-Hungary achievement, that takes so long, it might be best to simply play through the game than a 20-year guide. So I will make that determination, but let me know what you guys want to see, because if you want to see more playthroughs, I do need to know that in a comment below. But with all of that being said, thank you all for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day.